Hey, Guobarice here. Our anniversary unit is arriving soon and boy is she destructive. She has some insane damage, but it's linked to a damage ceiling that you'll have to work for through proper gameplay and team optimization. Today we'll be going through how to achieve that when looking at her abilities, as well as my calculations on her eidolons, best builds, and lycones. We'll finish with teams and synergies and pool value. If this video helped, be sure to like and sub and share with your Castorice pulling friends. And now, let's begin. Castorice is our very first Quantum Remembrance unit and is a DPS-based remembrance. Among base stats, she goes even further than Mighty with the highest base HP, but the rest of her stats aren't too important. For trace priority, you want to focus on her Memo Sprite skill and Memo Sprite talent, followed by her ultimate, skill, and talent, and basics can be skipped. As a remembrance character, she has a whole lot of cool abilities, but instead of going through them one by one for 20 minutes, we'll look at how they mesh together. To do damage, Castorice will want to summon her big Memo Sprite dragon friend, Netherwing. And unlike Mem or Garment Maker, Netherwing will be leaving us and coming back, so you will need to keep resummoning them. The main way of unleashing Netherwing will be through her ultimate. It will summon it, advance its action by 100%, and create the Lost Netherland territory, which is basically a domain expansion. Inside this, all enemies will have their all-type res reduced by 20%, which is a pretty potent damage amp. Netherwing's stats are in the ultimate too. They have a monstrous speed of 165 and a max HP equal to 100% of max Newbud, more on that in a second, but it's basically 34,000 HP. If it takes 3 turns or hits 0 HP, it will disappear alongside its territory, but it will come back when you ult again. But then, how do we ult? Newbud is Castorice's unique form of energy, just like Fei Xiao and Acheron. It is based on character levels, but that's for lower account levels. For 99% of people, it will be a set 34,000 points. And you'll obtain points from allies losing HP, 1 point for every HP point lost. And that sounds like a whole lot of HP loss, that's like nearly killing your whole team twice, but it's not the only way of achieving Newbud. And when Netherwing is summoned, Newbud cannot be gained anymore, and HP loss instead will be converted 1-to-1 into Netherwing healing. The second mean of gaining Newbud is in her Ascension 2 passive, Contained Darktide. When allies other than Netherwing are healed, 100% of the healed value is converted into Newbud. Though this has a cap of 12% of Newbud's maximum limit per ally, or 4,080 healing per ally. And just like the HP loss being converted when Netherwing is on the field, healing will also be converted into healing for Netherwing. So already, you can see that the team losing HP and gaining HP back, or what we call HP fluctuations, are what charges up Castorice's ultimate to summon Netherwing. And when it's on the field, Netherwing takes the health loss and the health gain from allies to instead gain HP back for itself. And so, how do we lose HP as a team? Well, that comes in Castorice's skill. She will consume 30% of all allies' current HP and deal a decent amount of blast damage. This 30% HP consumption is going to charge her ultimate generation like crazy, and having a great sustaining power and high HP allies is going to make it even easier. And consuming HP does mean that she will use this instead of skill points, making her an SP neutral carry. Now, if Netherwing is on the field, her skill gets converted into an even stronger ability. It now becomes AoE, it does much more damage, and it's also a joint attack just like Aglaya's enhanced basic. But what it also does is consume 40% of all allies' current HP. Now Netherwing has to be on field for this, but this means instead of gaining ultimate charge, you now gain a ton of HP for Netherwing. You're basically consuming your team's health bars to feed your dragon. And so finally, what does our big dragon friend do? When acting, Netherwing can choose between 2 skills, a claw attack and its awesome Scorch Breath attack. The claw attack is a simple AoE attack and kinda cute, look how harmless he looks. The breath attack, however, is what you'll mostly be using. Activating it will consume 25% of Netherwing's max HP and deal AoE damage, and you can keep using it. When using it repeatedly, the damage multiplier will get stronger and stronger. And when Netherwing reaches under a quarter of their health, the final breath will reduce them to 1 HP, and it will automatically trigger a final ability. Now, when using the breath attack repeatedly, Castorice's Ascension 6 passive will also give a stacking damage % buff, making the later attacks even deadlier. It stacks up to 6 times and lasts until the end of Netherwing's turn. Realistically, we only get 4 breaths before they explode, but Blessings, her E2, and potentially future characters can help us gain more. But since we can choose to use the breath again and again, That also means we can choose to not do so as well, and instead finish Netherwing's action with a claw attack. So now you get where the nuance of her kit comes into play, and why Netherwing gets healed up so much. So Netherwing can consume most of its HP, but if you don't completely drain its HP, it stays alive. Castorice can then use her joint skill, consume all of that team HP you just healed up, and feed Netherwing for their second turn. If your healer also acts, even better. You're basically fueling Netherwing's HP so that they can unleash multiple breath attacks in one go. Instead of gaining energy, you're gaining health for your dragon to consume in order to do damage. Now when Netherwing is on the field, it's just too large and menacing, and so enemies can't target it, even with AoE. But that means when allies do take damage, they can remain at 1 HP and stay alive, which I think is really cool. Netherwing acts as a backup, but if they take damage past 1 HP, Netherwing will lose HP at an extremely high rate to compensate for this mechanic. And finally, on Netherwing's third turn, or after you reduce their HP to 1 on any turn, they will use that last ability, Winds Sweep the Ruins. It will deal a decent amount of max HP 6 times to random enemies. But yes, this is a bounce attack, and therefore in single target scenarios will do an insane amount of damage. Considering your breath one-shots weaker AoE enemies, the bounce will consider them dead during this attack and focus the central enemy. And when Netherwing regrettably explodes, they will heal all allies as a way of giving back to the community that helped them grow. Now for her last abilities, we first have her technique. Castorice's technique will enter the Nether Veil state, which means enemies get very scared of her. Attacking in it creates one of the coolest animations I've seen, replacing that black screen, and is truly animation power creep. She will summon Netherwing at 0 AV, as well as creating that 20% res pen domain. This means you can use a nice big attack at the start of combat. It also means you can save the dragon and essentially get her ult for free without having to lose or heal 34k points. Though at 165 speed, it will be hard to gain buffs on it unless you're using a Vonwak ally setup. She also has a completely brand new mechanic, which is a global passive you probably know already. If you have it on your team or just in your account, dead allies are delayed from dying. Kind of like a revive, but not fully, as you'll need to heal or shield them or else they'll die again. And this works once per battle and in endgame content. Now you should not pull her for just this revive. It is not game changing, it seems mostly for flair, saving you from a potential restart in endgame in some scenarios. If you needed a revive, your team was probably not great in the first place, and you also need a healer or shielder on your team, or else the revived ally will just die again. So finally for her kit, let's look at self buffs. First, you have the 20% res reduction from the domain expansion that was already talked about. Then when summoning Netherwing, all allies get a very small 10% damage buff. When allies lose HP, Castorice and Netherwing will get a stacking damage buff up to 60%. And when Castorice's HP is above half, her speed will be increased by 40%. With the Poet Set's condition of 95 speed, it will be at maximum just under the 133.4 breakpoint if you want the 32 crit rate, which I find annoying, but she gets over it easily with multiple ally gear choices. It's a way for her to use the Poet Set but cheat and actually be fast. Netherwing also gets a 100% speed buff when using their breath attack versus a full dead wave of enemies or enemies that can no longer lose HP. What this means is you get a decent buff in Pure Fiction as you can clear a wave and Netherwing will act again very soon. And finally, she will get all 3 good traces with crit rate, damage, and crit damage. Crazy. Before builds and more, let's check out Eidolons. E1 is a conditional original damage buff for Netherwing's attacks or joint attack based on the enemy's HP percentage. Original damage is its own separate multiplier. Basically, at maximum condition, you could get a 1.4 times undiluted increase to Netherwing damage. Again, it's conditional. E2 does a bunch of random stuff. First, you get 2 stacks of Ardent Wheel every time you summon your dragon, which basically translates to 2 free breath uses without HP consumption. So more breaths, more damage stacking. Cool. When summoning Netherwing, Castorice will also advance her action by 100%, which means she will act before Netherwing, and that includes the 0 AV action with her technique. And Castorice finally gains 30% of maximum new bud once per special skill per summon, which translates to way faster ultimates. Basically, faster ults, more Castorice actions, more damage from Netherwing. Though Castorice acting so much can hurt buff uptime, make sure to play around that when using characters like Remembrance MC. E4 is a classic E4 even on the anniversary unit, it's just some healing for the squad, maybe it will help you reach thresholds. E6 is a classic E6 too with 20% res pen. You also get weakness signal on every attack, which is okay, but then you also get 3 extra bounces on the Dragon Explosion, which means more damage. So here are my Eidolon calculations for Castorice. It should all be good going into 3.2 barring the E2, that can get weaker if you have bad support buff uptime, for example mem support from RMC. But you can play around it by using weaker abilities and only sending it all in when your true damage is active. You can also mitigate it by not using the advance at all and ulting on her turn instead. But now onto builds. She is very simple, as she has had 2 sets designed for her, and she has a very specific Memo Sprite friend that isn't like the others. Oh, and she's HP scaling. So for Relics, go with the new Poet set. 32% crit rate and 10% damage is no joke. She can use this set and still act very fast thanks to a passive giving 40% speed above half HP. There aren't really other alternatives right now for her, and 2 pieces pale in comparison. Before you say for Genius, that Def Ignore buff does not apply to Memo Sprites. And for Planars, it's the same story. She has a Memo Sprite, so Planars that aren't specific to that really hurt her. This is one con you might want to consider. Farming for her is harder than most who have alternatives. Even Aglaya has many alternatives. Main stats will want you rocking a crit chest, ideally crit damage, HP boots, HP or damage orb, and a HP rope. Nothing really changes here, only the orb is interchangeable and quite close in power. HP orb should edge it out by a % or 2 and get stronger if you have damage % supports or her E2. For Sacco, I would rock 7000 to 9000 HP. It is very dependent on your orb choice and light cone's base HP. Then for speed, you want to go base to maximize Poet's set. Crit rate, I'd get to 100% in combat and aim for 150 to 200 crit damage pre-combat. Remember, she has the Poet set's 32% CR, she has both crit rate and crit damage in traces, and 2 of her best supports give crit rate and crit damage. You'll be good. Now onto light cones. Unlike Aglaya, Castorice has no good free-to-play option in 3.2. Reminiscence falls off when the Memo Sprite disappears, and Castorice lacks the high self-buff that Aglaya has to offset the 3-star light cone's base stats. So unless you're getting the Battle Pass light cone, I recommend pulling her S1 unfortunately. Her S1 has a very high base HP, a max HP buff, and a whopping 30% Def Ignore for all of her damage. She also gets Advance Forward when the Memo Sprite dies, and this helps her low base speed achieve the 134 breakpoint without Dance Dance Dance. If you use that, then you'll be fine without this Advance Forward. Over Victory in a Blink, which is legit just 24% crit damage, I found a 44% damage increase. Better than Victory is any high base HP cone, provided it has at least 1058 base HP. The HP becomes stronger than the 24% crit damage from Victory. Then of course we have the Battle Pass light cone, but good luck dodging crit rate subs to not overcap. I'd prioritize her S1 over E1 unless you have the Battle Pass cone and or you want to head for that E2. So how good is she? Well, it's difficult. We have 2 things that benefit her quite heavily. First, the appearance of more AoE catered endgame modes outside of pure fiction to promote the Herter is also going to help out Castorice. Yes, she can do amazingly into 3 targets and she has bounce on the dragon, but her dragon breath power is fully AoE. The second thing is that the endgame is buffing her a lot too, as usual, it's normal. But one buff notably is that we have in-between breath healing. Normally you cannot heal in between, as heal on attack happens at the end, and emergency healing likewise. Thus, these blessings can let her go from the normal 4 breath maximum at E0 to 5 breaths and even 6 breaths. When considering the damage % stacking and the multiply increase on the final breaths, this creates a high ceiling than she is normally allowed. But I do also think that just like with Fugue coming out to replace the extra toughness blessing for break gamers, we will get a healer that can heal in between breaths and open up her ceiling. But I do want to wait for the non-shield endgames to see how she truly performs. There is also the fact that she always has to use a sustain. So unless the sustain is insane in charge generation for her, or damage amping, which is unlikely, then every modern character capable of sustainless runs could reach a high ceiling with 3 new supports in their team. Of course, sustainless runs are not the norm, but here I'm talking about her ceiling. Right now, she is top tier in MOC, one of the strongest. In Pure Fiction, she's probably 2nd strongest, way stronger than most DPS there, but still not the Herter level. And in Apocalyptic Shadow, I'd say she's around the same strength as the recent DPS as well. Anyway, this is all considering a team with RMC, Gallagher, and Tribby, only requiring 1 limited unit to pop off, just like Firefly back in the day. But without Tribby, her performance does take a hit, especially in Pure Fiction. But now onto synergies and teams. Her power is doubly linked to a sustain. She needs healing to consume health for her energy and Netherwing's HP, and she needs healing as it directly translates into energy and Netherwing's HP. The two best sustains in the game for Castorice are Gallagher and Lewatcher. Not only do they have the highest healing output in the game, they also have on-attack healing. This means no waiting for your sustain to take a turn. Instead, you can battery or heal Netherwing from not only Castorice's attacks, but any support's attacks as well. And there enters someone like RMC and Tribby, who have high attack frequency. Other sustains will work, but Gallagher and Lewatcher felt the best by a margin. You don't need to pull Lewatcher or get him for free, as Gallagher actually batteries her better. But he does have the benefit of having better heal uptime in the case of very fast enemies or pure fiction. It's also worth noting that they can run Sakados and buff crit damage, as well as shared feeling for energy spam, but so can the others. But with their high action count, they could also run the Battle Pass Light Cone for healing to all allies every turn. Before this patch, this cone was pretty much irrelevant, but can now be used to battery Castorice. You do not need it, and should not buy the Battle Pass just for this though, as shared feeling or other healing cones are fantastic already. For sports, her big three are Tribby, RMC, and Sunday. Tribby is just so powerful for her as a universal buffer with no downtime. She also brings excellent damage into multi-target scenarios, and considering that's Castorice's favorite scenario and they share the same element, Tribby should usually be popping off. But what's even more powerful than other supports is her attack frequency, thanks to her follow-ups. These hitting enemies with on-attack healers supercharges Castorice immensely. And of course, you have the broken E1 from Tribby to further crush enemies and make Castorice's single target nuking get stronger. Tribby might be her most essential piece right now outside of the sustain, as RMC is free for your second slot. For replacements though, Rollmate is great but struggles into pure fiction. You can also try an Eagle tutorial Pella geared for ult spamming, which synergizes with Castorice's S1. And finally, you can try Jiao Che. Either way, neither of these three compare to Tribby's damage output, attack frequency, and amp for Castorice. Now, for the second slot, first off, people that don't pull Sunday will don't worry, because RMC is free and the best second support for Castorice. They have a higher ceiling in most cases than an E0 Sunday does, and don't rely on needing to hit healing thresholds. Though getting to their highest ceiling requires a lot of optimization and/or RNG that most players won't achieve. Though RMC being better most of the time does not mean Sunday is bricked or terrible with her. Sunday is great in MOC and AS if you cannot use RMC, but definitely use RMC in Pure Fiction if you can. Anyways, let's see how they nerfed the synergy between the summon support and Castorice, and what makes RMC so powerful. First off, needing healing and Gallagher and Lewatcher being the strongest promotes high frequency ally attacks, and Sunday ain't attacking anyone. RMC, however, attacks many times, as well as having Mem doing so. And speaking of healing, Mem counts as another ally for the sake of healing and health consumption to battery Netherwing. Speed tuning can also be a bit sussy, with Castorice's speed fluctuating if your healing isn't good enough. With Sunday doubling turns, this hurts even more so. There's also the fact that Sunday's buffs apply on his action, and specifically to the unit and their memo sprite. That means if he applies his crit damage before Netherwing is summoned, it won't be reapplied after summoning it. Mem's crit damage, however, is AoE and permanent, and their true damage can be applied to Castorice, which then always gets reapplied to the memo sprite. That's just how it works in their E1, it's an automatic re-application. Oh, and Castorice doesn't use energy, something Sunday really likes giving. Despite all these nerfs to the synergy, and I'm pretty sure there's more, well, Sunday is still just fine, you just have to adopt a new strategy. And using Sunday, who's OP in many places on your other team, isn't really a downside. Remembrance MC, when paired with Tribby, will be geared to explode in your dragon every time they act. This is because, with Gallagher, you should have enough healing to battery up Castorice to ult again very quickly. This means you are using extra bounce attacks to do more damage than just spamming breaths every turn. You can also Castorice ult whenever, as Mem support will be up if you have it on Castorice. When the healing shilling disappears, this insta-detonation playstyle may get worse though. Sunday instead will look to keep Netherwing up for longer in order to apply his maximum buffs, and also to account for his weaker battery potential. The way to run Sunday is to get Castorice's ult before Sunday acts. With Castorice ahead of Sunday through various means, this lets you skill on her to battery herself for large amounts. Then you can summon Netherwing, act and consume HP but don't explode it, Sunday advances Castorice Castorice acts and heals it back up, and then it goes again with all those buffs. It's a very powerful amount of burst damage, but does require a lot more healing. When the heal shilling goes from endgame, you might not be able to achieve this consistently, and Sunday's power might decrease. To speed tune Sunday, you have a few options. The first is to make him a bit slower than Castorice's speed, post 40% speed buff, even if she's under 134 speed. You can use Dance from allies to hit breakpoints instead. You can also make him 134 and use Castorice's signature to advance past him. And you can also run Sunday at 160 speed instead and have him act just after Netherwing. Finally, Castorice can be run with My Day or Blade in dual DPS teams. Now you might feel a bit of deja vu with Jingliu Blade falling off, but that's kind of because it was a one-sided synergy. Jingliu helped Blade get more charges, but that's it. Blade didn't benefit Jingliu, and Jingliu My Day isn't going to happen. Castorice, however, benefits both of these units whilst also boosting their damage with a couple abilities. But now we have a reverse synergy too. Blade attacking a lot with extra HP consumption means more attacks, and that means more healing from Gallagher or Watcher, and thus battering Netherwing. He also consumes his own HP a bunch for more battering, and he also has self-healing for, again, more battering. Mighty does a similar thing with his extra attacks being the Godslayer extra turns rather than follow-ups. He can also heal a bunch, and he also consumes his own HP a whole ton. Finally, he can revive a bunch of times if it gets dicey, which then heals even more. Another benefit versus Jingliu Blade back in the day is that we didn't have a great buffer for them both, as they both scale on different stats. With Tribby involved, and Castorice being HP scaling anyways, we have much better multiplier synergy. Either of these two units can be used with Castorice, with Blade being preferred in AoE fights like Pure Fiction, and Mighty being preferred in 1 to 3 targets, or just match weaknesses. Anyway, her best team is still Hypercarry with Tribby RMC, but it's really cool to have her enable and be enabled by 2 other DPS if you want to keep using them. So let me know what you think of Castorice down below. I think most of her kit is extremely cool, with HP siphoning working towards a giant dragon attack. She has a bunch of nuances in whether she uses her breath or claw or basics or skills, and you have to manage your team's health. But anyways, like and subscribe if this helped, share to others that might need help, and thanks for watching. Thanks to my amazing YouTube members, and have a good day.